A new year is upon us, 2025. Things are going to be picking up and doing good for this channel, or at least that's my hope. But to bring in the new year, I figured for movie tales we would go back and do another big epic tales. We haven't done one of these since Cleopatra, which it's felt like it's been forever, so we talked about Cleopatra. The problem with doing an epic tales is you have to find the time to watch a 4 hour movie. And I'm a busy guy. I'd rather put on like an 85-minute movie that you're going to see come up very soon as well than spend 4 hours of my day sitting down watching a movie. Not because it's challenging for me, but I get really antsy when I'm like, there's other stuff I could be doing right now. 3 hours, that's fine. I could do a 3 hour movie pretty easily. But 4 hours, sometimes I just feel like, oh, I wasted like a whole day. That's not how I feel about Gone with the Wind, which is the film we're talking about. I just felt sometimes like, oh, I mean, we're only an hour and a half left of this. It's hard. And that's a topic we don't have to have about a movie today, is how attention spans have shortened for different generations. Because this is like the most highest grossing film in the history of movies. It is. I think it still is. Like, for inflation, this is still in the top 5, maybe even number 1. Like, it is the film of films. People can quote it. People know it without having seen it. And that is the mark of a piece of film that has stood the test of time. Is like, even if you haven't seen it, you are familiar with the iconic line from it. Of course, this one being, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. This is Gone with the Wind, the biggest picture that you probably saw in the 30s. I have serious doubts if any of my audience was alive at that time. It's possible. There's people from the 20s and 30s still kicking about. But I doubt it. I don't think any of them saw this. So this is like in circulation for re-releases and people going to see it all over the place. The more they put it in theaters again, I know it had its 85th anniversary last year. I don't think it made that much money depending on where it was released, because where are you going to find the time slot to put this out? Nonetheless, it is there, and it had its big anniversary, and I figured let's talk about it. It was on TCM. I hit record on the PVR. Like, we'll get to it eventually. And now we're here in the new year to talk about it. I know at some point in my life I had at least attempted watching Gone with the Wind. You know, this is not one I would give like a young cinephile to start with. Not because it's like challenging, but you have to build an appreciation for what film is, especially in like that time frame, before you jump into like this aspect of like film of the 30s. Beautiful Technicolor, sweeping sets, big sequences and shot setups. It is something you can't fully appreciate until you've just experienced a lot more film. And that might be a weird thing to say, but I really do stand by that. Like, if I was to see, if I were to see somebody who's like 15 and they're like, I love movies, I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, and I'm obsessed with like these modern directors, I don't know if I'd be like, you know who you like is Victor Fleming. I don't know if I'd say that. Like, it does sometimes feel like it is homework or eating your vegetables. And that's okay. I think some films should feel like that. If it ever gets to the point where watching films feels like that for you, though, maybe film was not the hobby you should have. To me, this is both a mix of, oh man, look at the greatest film ever made, and yep, there's where film history is happening in front of me. It's both of those. I appreciate this film a lot, and maybe that's the most I can say about it on that aspect, is it's never going to be in my personal conversation for the top 10 films ever made. I would put it in a list of like, this is one of the most important films ever made, especially in like American filmmaking, and I know why an audience likes this. It's messy, the characters are messy, they have weird intentions and feelings, and it talks around a lot of issues that are very clear and on screen for a lot of it as well. So that's fun. It's about sex. It's about people dying. It's about the Civil War, which I guess we'll get that out of the way right now. I'm a Canadian-born guy. I live in Canada. I have no real connection to the history of the Civil War. I'm aware of it, and oh man, I'm going to sound so stupid here. I think the South lost. Is that true? I know that, look, this is from the side of the South. Everyone seems very upset that the war's over because they lost or something. Everyone's making fun of the Yankees. I don't know who is like on what side as like historical figures from like the time period. I couldn't tell you. But this is like a period piece in the 1800s, so it's possible that this is still like fresh in the mind of the country of the Civil War, but I don't know. I truly don't know what the Civil War was like in what the intention was there. I'm sorry. I know it's like the Confederacy versus the Yankees, is that it? Or was look, it's the South versus the like the stronghold, the first settlers, right? Because they wanted to not be a part of Britain? Is that it? Look, that doesn't matter. That's just the backdrop. Men will go off to war. This is about one woman, Scarlett O'Hara. I'm sure you are familiar with that name. It is a name that is just etched in the caverns that is cinematic history, and it's Vivien Leigh, who is somebody we have yet to talk about on this channel. You know what? She's great. She is so great, and what a dumb thing to say about one of the best film stars of all time. She's good. She's phenomenal in this movie. She is doing stuff and behaving in ways you just can't imagine. She is gorgeous. She is beauty on screen. It's got that perfect saturated Technicolor feel mixed with just like the kind of grain stock that works so well. If you go to any antique shop and you see like a picture of an old like 30s or 40s or even 20s like actress, there is a chance you're looking at somebody who is modeled to look like Vivien Leigh from this movie. It's just that timeless, specific feel that everything feels like it's from. And that is just what she does. So Scarlett is the eldest daughter of the O'Haras. They are Irish immigrants, or her father is an Irish immigrant. He married an English woman. They had 3 daughters. It is Scarlett, and then it's Ellen and Sue Ellen. And they are just, they're like kind of part of like the elites here. I forget where they're based. It's not Atlanta, is it? It might be Atlanta or Virginia. It's one of those, Midwestern, Mid-South, whatever. I'm Canadian. I don't know. But, they're over there. And she fancies this boy. He's kind of an older man. His name is Ashley, and he is of the Wilkes family. Now, the Wilkes have another son named Charles, and they are just, another wealthy family. But the thing about the Wilkes is they marry their cousins. So Ashley, who Scarlett is interested in, is going to marry Melanie, who's his cousin. They make a point of saying that. Melanie, played by Olivia de Havilland, who lived to be 104. I just want to point that out. She died in the COVID era, and she was in this movie. Okay, moving on from that. She was also in the Errol Flynn Robin Hood movie. Okay. So there's a big party that takes place on the Wilkes estate. Every guy at the party, except for Ashley, fancies after Scarlett. They're like, look at this beautiful woman. Look at her piercing eyes. Look at how gorgeous she is. We're all going to stand around her and try to feed her food. She's going to let one of us get her some dessert because she's so hungry. And she chooses Charles. She chooses Charles because Charles is the brother of Ashley, and she is trying to make Ashley jealous. That, of course, is not going to work, but I digress. The whole point of this movie is that this girl does not get over Ashley until she realizes what she needed to hear from the beginning, which is grow up. Look, it's not about that fully, but you know what I mean. So at this party, we are also introduced to Rhett Butler, played by Clarke Gable. And a man just walks on screen and says, yes, I'm the actor of this piece. Thank you for asking. I'm going to be more famous than all of you, probably. Clarke Gable, an amazing talent, a gorgeous man who just walks on screen and is like, hello, I'm sexy and hot. Guess what? I'm a renegade guy. I'm a war profiteer. If we go to war, I'm going to be a profiteer from it. I play both sides. I come out on top. I'm only looking out for Rhett. He fancies Scarlett from the beginning because she is different than the other girls, which is a trope we have seen a lot of. It's classic Jane Austen stuff. It's Little Women. It's like the Joe Marsh of you're going to be different than the other girls because you just can't sit still and have this thing. Is either because you're pining for something you can't have or you don't like how contemporary society treats you and your ilk. That is what Scarlett is to Rhett. Keep that in mind as the story progresses. All the girls at the party take like an afternoon nap. Grown women just say, it's time to nap now while the boys talk about war. In the war talk, Rhett's like, well, if we go to war, those Yanks have cannons. What do we have? Slaves. That's the other thing about this movie, folks. Let's get it out of the way. There are going to be depictions of people in this film that have aged poorly and were bad depictions at the time. It's a complicated thing to talk about because I am both a white guy and don't know anything about American history on like a deep level of knowledge. But this movie, and some people will say, well, it's pretty progressive because Hattie McDaniel was the first African-American actress to be nominated and win an Academy Award. And that is both really cool, but the performance she is giving in this movie is very complicated and very specific, and that's going to be challenging for a lot of people. It's crazy, and it's just something we have to acknowledge. Anyways, at that same party, it's announced that the South is going to go to war. A civil war is going to happen. So everyone's like, let's go to war, including Charles, who at that party at the same time proposed to Scarlett. So they get married before he goes to war, and they don't have time to do anything else because Charlie is going to die in war. First dead husband. It won't be the last. So a grief-stricken Scarlett just lost her husband, and she's like, this sucks, this is miserable. She confesses her love to Ashley before he goes to join the war effort, and we see that Rhett hears this, and this is where Rhett's like, oh, you're a girl I'm fascinated by. I'm going to follow you your entire career. So, Scarlett is in love with Ashley. Ashley is going to marry his cousin, while Charles, the brother to Ashley, marries Scarlett. He dies in war, but Ashley doesn't. So to help with like her grief-stricken mind, Scarlett goes to move in with Melanie, who was also married to Ashley at this point, and live with her aunt. So when Ashley gets home from the war, Scarlett can be there and be like, hey, do you remember me? I love you. Yay! That's the plot. And throughout that time, Rhett will show up into her life being like, you know, it's weird that you're still in love with this guy who's like married to somebody that you don't like and is kind of going to become your friend as the story progresses. Meanwhile, I'm a free agent. You and I think alike. We both think marriage is like a construct, and we're both clearly in love with somebody that doesn't love us back. You know, me being in love with you, Scarlett, and you being in love with Ashley. We should hang out and just like have fun and stuff and just enjoy our time. Like, there's a party that they go to. It's like bad for people mourning to go to a party, but Rhett's at that party and he like pays $150 of like gold coin so he can dance with Scarlett at the party. And she's like, this is awesome. Like, I did not love Charles. I was trying to make Ashley jealous, and you're really helping me like have a good time right now. Does not fall in love with him at that moment. I'm kind of jumping through the plot a lot. I will just say this. Every single performance is breathtaking. Clarke Gable just knows how to command a room. He is just so talented, and he's so fun and charming. Every single outfit that Vivien Leigh is wearing is the best costuming I've seen in a film maybe ever. Look, it's Technicolor. It's going to look marvelous. The colors freaking pop in this thing. They look fantastic. The greens that she wears, they are beautiful. There's like a really nice sequence where she's wearing like a blue dress and yellow gloves that look phenomenal. The black that she wears when she's mourning, gorgeous. It's a stunning movie. The sets are great. There's so many background actors. An expensive film that pays off and looks better than most films today. So that's awesome to see. This film looks gorgeous. So some time is progressing. Ashley comes home for a bit, and there's not like a confession of love, but Ashley kind of strings her along, just being like, just stop with this fantasy. It doesn't matter. And where do we go from here? There's just so much to cover. There's just so much going on. Olivia de Havilland, she is given the unceremonious task of being unaware of the stuff that Scarlett's feeling towards her husband while still being aware of it. The war is coming through to the city where they live, so they have to kind of be like nurses and like help the doctors and stuff. And you see like the one with the more sympathy for it because she's not love struck is Mellie. She's like, I am willing to help you here and do part of this stuff. Whereas Scarlett's like, man, I don't want to really be a part of this. It's crazy. It's too much going on. I don't like it. I don't like it. Meanwhile, it gets pretty heated. You know, like there's a huge battle going on. It's getting closer and closer where people in the city are deciding to realize maybe it's time we should evacuate. And as things get more intense, Scarlett's like, I want to go home. I want to see my sisters and my mom and my father. I want to go back to Tara. Tara is where she lives. It's a big ranch. Her dad rides horses. That's going to come up later. Just keep in mind. So as like there's a war raging outside and it looks like the South are going to lose this part, so the Yankees are coming in to defeat them, they have to escape. But at that same time, too, Melanie is giving birth to her child, so they send some like people that work in the house. It's Prissy? Is Prissy like the young black girl that works for them? Me describing the plot is just a terrible job of describing Gone with the Wind, one of the most beautiful and spectacular movies ever made, with the best costuming, the best editing, the best cinematography, and best acting ever in film. Prissy goes to find where Rhett's staying. He's at like a certain brothel with his friend Belle. Belle's like gonna be like his confidant throughout the piece, like the girl that he likes because he's like a guy who's not tied down to a woman, so we can go have fun with these types of women. And he eventually steals a horse and carriage so he can go help get Scarlett and Melanie and Prissy out of the house because there's a war going on right behind them, right beside them. It turns into a very harrowing escape where there's people really trying to like steal their carriage and their horse as they're trying to flee. An intense moment. It gets to the point where they have to cover the horse's eyes so they can like keep it away from looking at like the burning trains and fire all around them. I really dig it. Like I talked about the colors already, but the silhouettes and the shadows, there's a lot of that in here, just like the orange sunset fading away and people looking off into the distance. It's so gorgeous. It looks beautiful. And I don't know anything about the Civil War or what's going on here. Were we burning down entire, like, towns? Was that what we were doing? Has America been broken from the beginning? It's insane, really, like, what they are doing here. Like, everything's on fire. Complete places are destroyed. And that leads the conflict of Rhett and Scarlett to go their separate ways through the first half of the movie. Because Rhett finally realizes he's got to step up. This girl that he cares about is about to lose everything. If he wants to win her favor, which he clearly wants to do, he's going to join the war effort and help the boys. Because we don't know where Ashley is at this point, but Ashley's wife, his son that was just born, and the girl that's pining for him are headed back to Tara to get on with their lives. So the girls get back to Tara. Rhett leaves them kind of just like in the middle of like a field to go join the war effort. They get to Tara, and this is where Scarlett realizes that her mother is dead. A lot of the help has left, and her father is going insane. So now she has to step up and become the matriarch of the family. She literally has a beautiful sequence before we cut to the intermission where she is just standing in the field seeing that there's one carrot that grew, and she's like, God, if you help me, I will never ask for anything again, and I will make my life great, and I will never be poor. This is where I'm changing everything for myself. That is where we see Scarlett at her lowest. Lowest financially and emotionally. I think she hit some different types of lows later, just like of how far she is sunken. But she has lost a husband. She's lost her home. She's lost her mother. The place where she was living is decimated and burned down. The guy she's in love with just is trapped in war somewhere, and this guy that helped her just abandoned her. So we then take an intermission, but we're not going to take one here. We don't need to because we're just going to keep rolling. So intermission, get popcorn, go to the bathroom. You're watching this movie. You're like, hey, this was exciting. Where could the second act go? Now, here's something I'll say. I don't think the second act is as strong as the first act. I like it, and it goes into a different area worth talking about, which is just like the true death of the South and like that, maybe more just like that era of America. That's kind of what this movie's about. Like the South that we're fighting for just was destroyed and it went with the wind. That's where the title Gone with the Wind comes from, because it was destroyed in like this sweeping movement, changing the face of a country. This new post-intermission section is more about like the industrial revolution of America, like capitalism sweeping up and rich people getting to build themselves stronger and higher. So it starts kind of shortly after like the war is over. Soldiers start showing up to Tara. They take care of them. This is where we learn that Ashley is still alive. He's not dead. He's just not in the location. And the father's still not doing well, so he's kind of losing his mind. There's also a man who enlisted named Frank Kennedy. Now, Frank Kennedy is an older gentleman, not super old, but older than the girls, and he has fancied Sue Ellen pretty much since he's known her, and he wants to propose to Sue Ellen, but he doesn't have any money to his name. So he's going to go into the city, and when he gets enough money to properly propose to Sue Ellen, he's going to do that. So we're just putting that aside. We'll come back to that story in a little bit here. And the idea is that Scarlett built up Tara to be like a new sanctuary where she is fending for herself. She's treating the help better, the ones who have stayed. Everything's going better for her. Things are working well. And she hasn't seen from Rhett in a while. But suddenly, Ashley returns to the farm because he realized that's where his wife is. So they reconnect. He gets to meet his son. And Scarlett and Ashley have like their heart to heart where he's like, I do care about you. I care about your integrity. And that's what I love about you is how strong-willed you are. I don't love you that way. But she's like, I will be yours. We could just leave right now. I don't care about any of this. I just want you. Let's go right now. And he's like, I can't. I care about my wife more than I care about you. Just leading her on more and more and more. Or so we say. That eventually leads to because the South lost, I think, like the Yankees are putting more taxes on a lot of this stuff. So in order to keep the farm, we're going to have to see Scarlett put more money into it. I said it already. I'm just going to say it again because this is a 4-hour movie and it's hard to just like do a short video about it. Vivien Leigh is phenomenal. And not only does she have like the best dresses you've seen, she is just so emotive in every single scene. It's still in like that Hays Code era where we're talking over stuff, we're not saying things, but she's clearly a horny woman for one guy. There's so much lust in her entire existence, and she doesn't really know where it's going to go. And then you have Rhett, who's this guy that is just the exact same as her. It's amazing. It's amazing. These are two of the best movie actors ever. Like, they're so good together. Isn't it crazy to say that Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, two of the most famous characters in all of film, are good? Of course they're good. Rhett was kidnapped by the Yankees, so he's in prison. But because he's so charming and good at gambling and losing money, he's also a millionaire, by the way. He just has his millions and like other stuff. Like he was like a war profiteer. He did stuff, okay? He didn't really care. Scarlett goes to see him because she needs $300 to keep the farm. He's like, you got dressed up and you lied to me. I'm not going to give you the money, okay? Don't worry about that. We'll come back in each other's lives eventually. So as she's leaving his prison, she runs into Frank. Remember Frank Kennedy, who like wanted to propose to her sister? Well, he's doing pretty good. He's got like a nice business going on. He's selling like plates and stuff. He's also doing like some lumber on the side. That's another thing. So because we have seen Scarlett become a very smart lady, she's like, I have an idea. So she marries Frank. This is her second husband. And now she owns part of his business. And she goes further and further into lumber until it literally becomes the Kennedy like construction company. And eventually that leads to her taking pity on Ashley. So Ashley buys into the company, so it becomes like the Kennedy and Wilkes construction company, taking over the world. She is now a rich woman, all because she betrayed her sister. And her sister's not like a main character throughout the piece. She shows up sparingly just to like tell Scarlett that she's stupid and has made bad investments and stupid choices. Oh, it's good. It's good. Eventually, Rhett gets out of prison. He's like, hey, you're doing pretty good for yourself, doll. He calls her darling, actually. No, dear. It's dear. because of the most famous line. He says, "Well, dear, you're doing pretty good for yourself." Frank calls her sugar, and she hates that. Frank's just kind of an idiot who gets like strung along. He's the Ralph Bellamy. If this was his girl Friday, that's what he is in this position. And eventually that leads to her getting attacked on a bridge when she's checking on some people that they're going to like hire for a site. She gets attacked. It leads to the men who are still fighting for the South. That includes Frank, that includes Ashley, and that does include Rhett. They all go out on a mission to like get the people that attacked her because it was like some guys who still support like the Yankees, right? So that goes into another intense scene where all the girls are like held up at Melanie's house and some officers show up. Is that the Confederacy? I don't remember. Which side was the Confederacy on? I should have looked this up or remembered, but it's a big movie and I was distracted by the pretty girl in the pretty dress falling in love with handsome mustache man, okay? That's what I took away. The war stuff, whatever. There's always a war. It sucks, but that's true. There's always a war. I like the stuff about the two hotties doing hot people stuff. So that's going on. They show up thinking that Ashley was involved in like the attack on the site, which we know he was, but they have like a cover up. And they like pretend to be drunk and say they were like at a brothel with Belle being Rhett's friend from earlier. But as that scene drags on, we realize that Frank's not with them, and it turns out later on, after we realize that Ashley was shot by somebody as they attacked those people, because Rhett's like a spy or something. Frank was killed. That's husband number 2 that died. That's 2 dead husbands for Scarlett. And Sue Ellen has nobody to marry her, and she hates that she's going to die an old maid. Do you remember when that was like a problem, you know? Where it's like, I'm 14. I'm never going to find a husband. What about this 38-year-old man that wants to marry me? I'll give him 5 kids, all named after his dad or something. Remember when that happened? I mean, that still happens in some parts of the world, but remember that was like what you were supposed to do? Oh, it's so gross. Imagine being 28 and thinking, I'm an old maid. I'm never going to get married. Crazy. Everyone then died at like 60, so I do get it. It's like half your life, right? Whatever. Okay, so Frank's dead, and Scarlett can't mourn. She's like, I got the money. I don't know. Nothing feels right. She's got another great dress for her. That's when Rhett shows up to her house, and the entire time we have Mammy, who is the Hattie McDaniel character. She's in the background of every sequence. She hates Rhett. She's like, just stop pestering this woman who lost 2 husbands. What are you going to gain from this? Anyways, this is a really nice heartfelt moment where Rhett's like, I've waited for you for so long. You've been in love with Ashley this whole time. I think now that he has a son, you could realize that you're not going to have the life you wanted, and you could put that aside. So I figured I'd stop waiting to ask you. So I figured I'd stop waiting for you to figure it out, and I would just confront you about it. Marry me. So husband number 3's on the way, because Charlotte's like, I think you and I are good together. And while I don't completely love you, our chemistry is undeniable. I mean, you're Clarke Gable, I'm Vivien Leigh. We go together well. People are going to remember us for Gone with the Wind. So I guess I will marry you. They go on a honeymoon to New Orleans. It's a very beautiful moment. And she's homesick again, so they go back to Tara, and things just build themselves up from there. Eventually her father dies, so that's her mother and her father and 2 husbands that are dead. Okay? Keep that in mind. As more stuff is going to happen. And it's very intense and very scary, but they get married and they're happy, and we time jump a little bit because they have a baby. Yes, we have a little kid, Bonnie Blue Butler. Yeah, Bonnie Blue Butler. And she likes to ride horses like her father, and Rhett's instantly in love with this kid. It's a beautiful kid, very fun. Great stuff there, but mom's still in love with Ashley, and they are now the only 2 people working together on the business level of the construction site, so it's the talk about town that they're having an affair. Probably. It's crazy. We're jumping around a lot more just because the last half of this movie is kind of just Clarke Gable realizing the mistakes he made in his life and being the most charming guy about it. Rhett's a very complicated character because you want to hate him. There's parts where you're like set up like, oh, he's the bad boy, he's the outcast, he's the rebel, he's going against everything. But Gable's so charming that you can't help but be drawn to him. But some of the actions he takes later on, they're kind of annoying because he's not like our main protagonist. He's kind of like somebody going against stuff with Scarlett at the end. He just does such a good job that you can't help but be on his side. Because a lot of the stuff he's saying is true. He's like, I gave you all the time in the world to fall in love with me. You spent the entire time in love with Ashley. I can't keep doing this anymore. And now that we don't have our daughter to do this, which, yes, that's also what happens. She lost 2 husbands, her parents, and her child dies in a horse accident because, like, her father did, like, a huge jump on the horse and fell off. Her daughter, Bonnie, falls off the horse, breaks her neck. The baby dies. And I'm like, oh, man, I think that's heartbreaking. And it draws them further apart where they hate each other more, and it leads to some intense sequences where they both get drunk and hate each other. And it's kind of implied that there's a sequence after their daughter is dead and they're yelling at each other where Rhett rapes or assaults her in like a very visceral manner, because it kind of like reignites their passion for each other in some sense, where she's really to be a part of him. And it's like, did they have another baby? Kind of that thing. But then the baby died after they were fighting because she fell down the stairs, and that was a thing that happened. No, that's the infidelity stuff, like the birthday party where she comes home and she's like, I'm pregnant. No, right. That's when oh my God. It's a 4-hour movie. I'm sorry. That's before the child dies, because Rhett takes Bonnie to London with him. They come home early, and she says she's pregnant again, and she falls down the stairs and loses the baby, and he doesn't think it's his baby. And then Bonnie dies, making them further apart, but kind of closer together at the same time. And right after Bonnie dies, literally like 10 minutes later, Melanie is sick. Melanie, who has been the closest confidant next to Mammy that Scarlett has had, and they've kind of grown to like each other. Like, they started off like liking the same guy, so there was a distance between the two. As the story progressed, they're like the two women who support each other and are with each other. And then she passes away, and she's like, take care of Ashley and be kind to Rhett because he loves you. This is where we're kind of getting to the end now. This is where Scarlett finally realizes that she can't be with Ashley because he is too in love with Melanie, his cousin, to have any feelings towards her. So she's like, oh fuck, I messed up with Rhett. Like, I really like the ending to this movie. I think it's very strong. You know, how can one of the best movies ever made have such a good ending? Is that possible? Yes, it is, because it's Gone with the Wind. We're talking about Gone with the Wind. One of the greatest films ever made, you know? So she goes home to talk to Rhett. We get like their final conversation. He's like, I can't keep doing this. I'm going back to Charleston. That's where I'm from. I just want to find peace for once in my life. Like, we had a daughter. She reminded me so much of you. So much of the reason I fell in love with you, which was like your rebellion, your attitude, the way you just speak and behave and are so aware of yourself. But you just can't see the things that are in front of you, something that we've always known. And as much as I want to sit here and love you, I can't. And there's a scene earlier on where he's confiding in Belle, saying, like, I want to be gone with this girl, but I just can't be gone with her. He has the same scene with Melanie earlier. He can't shake her. And it's really cool to contrast him not being able to shake her with her not being able to shake Ashley, and Ashley not being able to shake Melanie. You just balanced it out so well. And it just leads to him leaving. He's like, I can't be with you. And I cannot imagine being in 1939 and you're going to see this really huge epic film about the Civil War. This woman who spent her whole time just blackballing her husband, being like, I like you. We have a daughter together. We are connected, but my heart's over here the entire time. I'm going to seek comfort in his arms, not yours. And then realizing that she can love him at the end. The person that she should have been in love with the whole time. Because their chemistry is undeniable. In any other movie, except maybe Casablanca, my favorite movie ever, it ends with these two reconciling and finding love. But that's not what this is. This ends with the famous line. She's like, is there anything I can do, anything I can say to make you stay? And he goes, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. And he leaves her because he has to. This entire 4-hour run, he saw this beautiful girl that he met at a party, saw how in love she was with this guy, and was just following her like, I'm going to be here waiting for you to grow up. And when you grow up, you're going to have me, somebody who is of the same intellectual crop as you. We're going to have fun. We're going to understand each other. Our daughter is going to be very talented. We're going to be sweet and kind. And we're going to support the right side of the war, depending on like where you grow up in America at that time. That's the side of the war that's right. That's what they're going to feel. And then when finally she comes to the realization, he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I have known you for too long, and I know how you are. It's too late. It is too late. And he leaves her, and she spends the last, 5 minutes of the movie thinking to herself, I have to get him back. I have to win him back. I had the right thing in front of me the whole time. How do I get him back? I'm going to go home, and I'm going to figure it out. I have to go back to Tara to figure this out. That's where the movie ends. Not with, her realizing she messed up, just her fighting to get back to that thing, because he's gone with the wind. It's over, it was a time in history that doesn't exist anymore. There's the pre-war stuff, there's the post-war stuff, there's the revolution, everything's building up. She made too many mistakes out and in love that just messed it up for herself and cemented one of the best performances of any woman in the history of film. I love Scarlett O'Hara as a character. I think she is a fantastic study. There's so much you can delve into with her, so much you can think about. I think it's really interesting and cool. It's fantastic. This movie is fantastic. It is. It's Gone with the Wind. I don't know why I have to sell it to you if you don't know this movie. That sounds like a you problem. It's one of the most prolific films ever made. And it's good, and it's silly, and it's so romantic and beautiful and powerful and epic. It's an epic scale. It is not based on a true story. It's more based on the war and the time period, a story that could happen in that time period. And it won so many awards, so many Oscars. It went to Hattie and it went to Vivien. Clarke was nominated, and so was Olivia. It's a masterpiece, and it looks gorgeous, and there's so many just really cool shots. There's the famous shot where there's a bunch of soldiers lying on the ground, and we keep panning back till we get to the Confederate flag in the sky. Famous shot. The Simpsons parodied it too. It's classic. It's classic. It's wagons. It's big dresses. It's a bunch of cute people just doing cool stuff. I think this is a flawless film. Aside from the insensitive depictions at the time, but I'm not going to excuse it because it is bad. I will say there are worse depictions. I think a lot of the African-American characters do get some agency. They have their own meaning. You could have written Mammy as such a worse character. You could have written Prissy, or is it Big Sam is his name? Big Sam of his name. You could have written those characters worse. You could have. But you gave them enough to flesh out their world and be believable and have a believable connection to Scarlett. I think that worked well enough at least. It's an interesting film. I would say watch it. I would be hesitant to say it's going to be something that you're endearing to, but just know there's so much here to love. It's Gone with the Wind. It's good. I can't believe we just did 40 minutes on Gone with the fucking Wind. I knew we were going to talk about this movie sometime on the channel. I didn't know how long it was going to go. I don't think we'll ever talk about a longer movie. I can't imagine we would unless we do a entire season of television on Movie Tales, but I don't see that happening. I don't know. It's better than Cleopatra, a movie that bored me to death. Either way, it's good. Check it out. The next Epic Tales in 2027. Thank you all for watching this video on Epic Tales and God of the Wind. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck. See you at the movies.